Oh, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Weeks before the Russian military invaded Ukraine, a chilling story began to appear in a number of American media outlets. Unnamed sources in the Biden administration warned that Vladimir Putin was preparing what they called a false flag attack. The point of the attack was to be a pretext for war with Ukraine. The suggestion was that Putin would stage a mass killing and then accuse the Ukrainians of doing it. So the Pentagon warned Americans to expect, quote, very graphic propaganda, including footage of corpses and actors that would be depicting mourners and images of destroyed locations, as well as military equipment in the hands of Ukraine or the West, end quote. It was a pretty complex story, but the media accepted all of it at face value and then repeated it uncritically. One of the very few who dared to ask questions at all about where the story came from was an Associated Press reporter called Matt Lee. And for asking that question, the State Department's flack all but accused him of working for Vladimir Putin. So that's what happens when you ask uncomfortable questions. The media caught on quickly and stopped asking them. But for weeks, the administration continued to release more of what it called declassified intelligence about Russia's plans. Officials said that Putin was about to use chemical weapons in Ukraine. Joe Biden himself repeated that story. And that's why Biden told us we need to send another $14 billion in tax dollars to the Ukrainian government. Everyone in Washington accepted this at face value, and the U.S. government sent the money. But Biden was not telling the truth, and weeks later, the administration admitted that. According to NBC News, multiple Biden administration officials have confirmed that there is, quote, no evidence Russia has brought any chemical weapons near Ukraine. So that wasn't true. But it wasn't the only lie. NBC described this fiction about chemical weapons as just one of a, quote, string of examples of unverified information the Biden administration claimed was real. So they weren't just lying to us about what was happening in Ukraine, they were lying to us at scale. But amazingly, and this is the telling point, NBC was not bothered by that. In fact, they celebrated it. NBC described the lies the Biden administration had told as a, quote, bold and so far successful strategy. And then NBC sent out one of the many intel agency puppets it employs to let us, the viewers, know we should be grateful the Biden administration is lying to us. Watch.
Now we're in the middle of the war, and the U.S. has been releasing intelligence, and sometimes it's not always based on the most high-confidence reporting. For example, the United States made public that they believe there were indications that Russia may be poised to use chemical agents in Ukraine. Now, that hasn't come to pass, and officials told us that one of the reasons for making that public was in part to deter it. In another case, they talked about Russia going to China to ask for military help. There's no indication that that has happened either, but that was a way of warning the Chinese not to do it.
Oh, it's all very clever. So the Biden administration used disinformation to manipulate American public opinion. But NBC wants you to know that's okay because it was for a good cause. It was virtuous. So how should we feel about this? A news organization that celebrates lying to the public. Well, on one level, it's bewildering. Reporters exist to tell the truth. That's their entire job. Learning this is like hearing a doctor brag about killing people. It gives you the chills. If news organizations are eagerly promoting lies about a war, then what can the rest of us believe? What can we know is true? And honestly, it's hard to know what is true. We can be sure that Russian soldiers have committed atrocities in Ukraine. There are countless pictures of that. Some number of them must be real. But we can also be dead certain the war is not, despite what they tell us, a childish tale of good versus evil. This is Eastern Europe, after all. Everything is a lot more complicated than it looks on American TV. According to the New York Times, a recent video, for example, shows Ukrainian soldiers killing captured Russian troops. It happened last week. These are not even humans, says one Ukrainian soldier on camera. Ukraine's defense ministry later boasted about these killings, calling them precise work. So that happened. It's awful. Now, does the fact it's awful justify Russia's invasion of Ukraine? Of course it doesn't. The Russian invasion of Ukraine was wrong, and the results of that invasion have been a tragedy for everyone around the world. But at the same time, since our leaders have insisted on placing this country, the United States, in the middle of that faraway war for reasons they still haven't explained, we American citizens who supposedly run our government have a right to ask where our money is going and what is being done in our name.